Okay, start.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ويجوز استئجار الدواب للركوب والحمل، فإن أطلق الركوب جاز له أن يركبها من شاء، وكذلك إن استأجر ثوبا لللبس وأطلق. It is permissible to hire an animal for riding and for carriage. If he is أطلق or not released, but it doesn't make sense. If he releases
Unconditioned. If he unconditioned, he does not condition. He leaves it open. Okay, so let's start because time is up. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Okay, so this is talking about leasing, renting out. Okay, and we said renting out. Sorry, you don't have to open all them. Okay. وَيَجُوزُ إِسْتِيجَارَ الدَّوَابِ لِلرُّكُوبِ الْحَمْلِ. What kind of things can you rent out? So we said before, anything that you can sell, you can generally rent out. That's the kind of rule. So, can you sell an animal? Yeah. So therefore you can rent out the animal as well. Like nowadays, it's more like vehicles, cars, people rent out, lease out. So you can rent them out for various purposes. Common purposes for renting out animals would be rukub, to ride upon, and to hamal, yeah, to carry things. In the olden days, that's what was usually the purpose of leasing things out. Sometimes some people used to lease out animals for mating. So they would lease out a male animal like a bull or a horse or something like that, camel, and they would leave the animal with the female, and they would let him mate. They would charge people for that. But this technically is not allowed. The reason for it is because you don't know if anything's going to happen. Yeah, so if that kind of leasing is not clear. So here, istijar al-dawab lil-rukub wal-hamal. So riding, nowadays taxis we have. Yeah, you want a taxi to get somewhere, or you want to rent a car. Or hamal means to carry things. Yeah, so the thing you have to remember about animals is that you have to be able to take care of the animal as well. So you can't overload it. You can't, because animals sometimes they know the person that's riding the animal, it can harm them. So if it's a person who is experienced, it makes it very easy for them. And if the person is inexperienced, then it can become very uncomfortable for the animal. Okay, so now in the contract details, if the person has just put, I'm going to rent this animal to ride, and hasn't specified exactly who's going to ride it or these details, so therefore he is allowed to ride it himself, and he's also allowed to allow other people to ride it as well. Yeah, and see this kind of thing also sometimes applies to renting cars as well. So when you rent the car, they'll say to you, only you're allowed to drive it, no one else. And sometimes they might just say anyone's allowed to drive it. So those details, if it's unconditioned, mutlaq, atlaqa, فَإِنْ أَطْلَقَ الرُّكُوب, and if he makes the rukub, the riding, unconditional in the contract, جَازَ لَهُ, it's permissible for the person who is leasing, or the lahu and yurkibaha, arkaba yurkibu, to allow to ride it, man sha'a, whoever he wishes. Everyone got that? Okay, next. What about clothing? Can you rent clothing? Yeah, you can buy clothing, therefore you can rent clothing as well. So when it comes to clothing, you're allowed to rent clothing as well. So nowadays people rent clothing as well for weddings, or for certain occasions where these kind of things are required in society. كذلك إن استأجر ثوبا لللبس وأطلق. Likewise, if a person he hires out a suit, let's say a person hires out a suit for a wedding, and in the contract he's just made the unconditional, I'm just hiring it out. Therefore, he's allowed to wear it, and anyone of his shape, physique, is allowed to wear it as well. So here is where the convention comes in play, right? Because if someone who is not of that physique, not of that shape, and they try to wear that and they tear it, then that person is going to be responsible. Yeah, likewise, like we said about the animal as well. So if a person hires an animal and doesn't put the condition of who is going to ride the animal, and someone extremely heavy, like abnormally heavy, rides the animal, then that person is going to be responsible legally. فَإِنْ قَالَ لَهُ عَلَى, so if in the conditions in the contract he puts this in, عَلَى أَنْ يَرْكَبَهَا فُلَانٍ, that I'm going to rent this on the condition, or I'm going to rent it out to you on the condition that so and so rides it. أو يلبس الثوب فلان, or fulan so and so wears the suit, meaning specifies it, doesn't make it mutlaq, doesn't make it unconditioned. Then what? فَأَرْكَبَهَا غَيْرَهُ, so this guy who's hired the animal or hired the clothing has made someone else ride it, or has clothed someone else with it. كَانَ ضَامِنًا, then he will be responsible. إِنْ أَطَبَتْ الدَّابَّةُ, if the animal perishes, أو تلف الثوب, or the clothing becomes damaged. Yeah, why? Because in the contract this was there. This was part of the contract. وكذلك, and this ruling applies to كل ما يختلف باختلاف المستعمل. This applies to every single thing which differs with the differing of the user. Yeah, so in other words, there are certain things that will never differ with the differing of the user. So for example, like maybe a book will never change. It doesn't matter who uses it, it's generally the same. Yeah, it's not affected. But things like weight, an animal, or clothing, or so things of that sort, that's going to obviously change. So that would affect the contract. Everyone got that? Next, what about land? Can a person rent out land? Yeah, property can be rented out. فالعقار فأما العقار وما لا يختلف باختلاف المستعمل. Those are things which won't really differ. If you have a house, it doesn't matter how heavy that person is, it's not really going to affect the house generally. Yeah, so therefore property, land comes under those things which is not affected by the changing of the user. فأما العقار, as for عقار property, وما لا يختلف, and those things that do not change باختلاف المستعمل, with the changing of the musta'mil. If in the small print of the contract it's written فإن شرط سكن واحد بعينه, if in the contract this is written that only so and so can live in here, like someone said only Arib can live in this house, yeah, فله أن يسكن غيره, irrespective of the terms of the contract, Arib has the right to allow someone else to live in there as well. Why is this for? Because it's not going to be affected. Yeah, the whole point of having terms in contract is so that the item is not damaged. So if obviously the house is not going to be affected, whether Arib lives in there or someone else lives in there, doesn't really matter. Yes, what will matter is the things that go on in the house. So for example, like if it's just for living purposes, it's fine. But if a person wants to open, let's say, some sort of a mill in there, yeah, a flour mill, or wants to open some sort of some other blacksmith, then those are things that are going to affect.
How can you stipulate a number of people? No. So like you can say only 5 people are allowed.
I mean, it doesn't really damage the house, does it? The only thing that would probably come to mind would be something like health and safety. Yeah, sometimes like hotels do this. They'll say only this many people can stay in the hotel room, yeah, for health and safety reasons. Because nothing's going to get damaged really.
What if it's from money perspective, because they want to kind of make their money by
That doesn't matter.
Okay.
The thing we're looking at is we don't want the other person to get his property to get damaged. Okay. What about animal now? The number of people that can ride the animal, can they stipulate that in the contract? Huh? If it's a horse, can he say only 2 people can ride it?
Yeah.
No more. Or if it's a camel, can he say only 500 kilos? وإن سمى نوعا وقدرا يحمله على الدابة, and if he specifies a type or an amount, type, look at this, type or amount, and amount. So why type? You understand amount, because obviously if you have amount it could affect the weight. But what about type of object?
sharp objects.
Yeah, so obviously weight distribution as well. So if you have like cotton, if you're carrying a ton of cotton, that's going to be different from carrying a ton of rocks. Yeah, the weight distribution on the animal. So وَإِن سَمَّى نَوْءًا وَقَدْرًا يَحْمِلُهُ على الدابة مثل أن يقول, such that he says خمسة أقفز حنطة, 5 qafis of hinta, of wheat. Yeah, let's just imagine that to be 500 kilos of wheat. فَلَهُ أَنْ يَحْمِلَ, then he has the right, it's not obviously 500 kilos, but I'm just giving it so you understand. فَلَهُ, then therefore he has the right, مَا هُوَ مِثْلُ الْحِنْطَةِ فِي الضَّرَرِ, he can carry any sort of item which is similar to hinta. So those things which are similar to hinta in shape, form, he can carry that. So what kind of things are similar to wheat? Rice, barley, yeah. So all these kind of things, because they're not really going to harm any different than wheat would harm. Or aqalla, or anything which is less than it, like sha'ir or simsim, yeah, sesame seeds and anything else which is less than that. However, the things that he can't carry on there, وَلَيْسَ لَهُ أَنْ يَحْمِلَ مَا هُوَ أَضَرَّ مِنَ الْحِنْطَةِ, he cannot carry on there that which is more harmful than hinta, yeah, than wheat. Like salt. What do you mean by salt?
Going to wounds.
How is salt
In rocks.
rock form? Yeah, so salt usually is found in rock form, yeah, like sea salt. So because this is found in rock form, carrying it, obviously the weight distribution is not going to be the same as wheat. So this is why rocks of salt, hadid, iron, rasas, lead, these kind of things, weight distribution is going to affect. Yeah, so therefore he's not allowed to legally, he's not. And if he does carry these things and the animal gets damaged, he's going to be responsible for it. Everyone got that? Okay. If a person, he specifies in the contract that he's going to be carrying a certain item, therefore, if he carries something else which is of the same weight but different weight distribution, then that's not allowed. So, in ista'jaraha, if he hires the animal, liyahmila alayha, in order for a person to carry on it, qutnan, cotton. So, how would you describe the weight distribution of cotton? Yeah, evenly, isn't it? So it distributes equally. فَلَيْسَ لَهُ, then he does not have the right, and يَحْمِلَ مِثْلَ وَزْنِهِ حَدِيدًا, he can't carry the same thing which is iron. وَإِنْ إِسْتَأْجَرَهَا لِيَرْكَبَهَا, but if he was to hire this animal, لِيَرْكَبَهَا, to ride on this animal, right? And then what happened? أَرْدَفَ مَعَهُ رَجُلٌ آخَرَ, and then he put another guy behind him, yeah. So he had 2 people on it, himself and someone else. فَأَطِبَتْ, now the animal, it collapses, yeah, it dies because of their weight. How much do they have to pay in compensation? Who's responsible? Yeah, so 2 people, they ride this animal, he's only supposed to have 1 person, but he's got another person, put him on the back, and they're going on a journey and the animal collapses and dies. So how much are they going to be responsible? So they're obviously going to be responsible because they've breached the terms of the condition, the contract. ضَمِنَ نِصْفَ قِيمَتِهَا إِنْ كَانَتِ الدَّابَةُ تُطِيقُهُمَا, if the animal is able to hold both of them, then each one of them is going to be responsible for half. Yeah, so because they're both responsible, so half him, half him. وَلَا يُعْتَبَرُ بِالثِّقَلِ, and it will not be, the weight will not be, the relative weight will not be taken into consideration. So let's say one of them weighs 100 kilos, right, and the other one weighs 200 kilos. You're not going to say, oh, you are 1/3, you are 2/3. It won't be, compensation won't be distributed like that. It's just going to be equally per head. So there's 2 people there, therefore split it per head. Okay, what if a person, he hires an animal so that he can carry on there a certain amount of wheat? إِنْ اسْتَأْجَرَهَا لِيَحْمِلْ عَلَيْهَا مِقْدَارًا مِنْ حِنْطَةٍ, so let's say he hired it to carry 500 kilos of hinta, 500 kilos of wheat. فَحَمَلَ عَلَيْهَا أَكْثَرْ مِنْهُ, so what he's gone and done, he's tried to carry more on there. He thought he could carry more. So he's carried 1,000, yeah, so one ton, let's say. فَعَطِبَتْ, the animal, he collapsed. ضَمِنَ مَا زَادَ مِنَ الثِّقَلِ, he won't be responsible for the 500, but he will be responsible for the excess. Everyone got that?
If the person that is bought the animal from dies, how much is he going to give him back away?
So he won't be responsible for the animal dying if he wasn't negligent. Yeah, so if he kind of broke the terms of the contract, then he's responsible. So that's why when he carried the other person, only has to pay half. So it's split, but both don't pay half. Only one half has to be paid.
But in this one, how can you just say like, he says he's liable for what the excess is?
Yeah.
So just say you're only allowed to carry 500 kgs and you carry 600.
Yeah.
So do you just give them like...
So they'll work out and they'll go to markets and they'll find out how much would they have to roughly pay. So فَحَمَلَ عَلَيْهِ أَكْثَرْ مِنْهُ فَعَتِبَتْ ضَمِنَ مَا زَادَ مِنَ الثِّقَلِ. So what they'll do is like this. Let's say for example he carries 600. It's 100 extra, isn't it? So you're going to divide the value of that animal into 6 parts. And then he'll only have to give 1 part. Yeah? Okay, everyone got that?
But you've still lost the animal
Yeah,
completely. The
Yeah.
animal's dead.
yeah.
But you're only being compensated for
1/6.
1/6.
That's it.
Because the animal,
Because the animal's not strong enough.
negligent, it's just maybe natural cause.
Yeah.
Or
So when you rent something, it's like you're not responsible for what happens to it as long as you didn't, transgress.
Right.
It's considered to be like an amana trust. So just like a trust, someone given something to take care of, and they don't do anything which they're not supposed to do with it, and it gets damaged, it's not their fault.
it could be because the person who's renting it out has
Yeah.
incorrectly rented it out for
That's
the
it.
wrong purpose.
Everyone got it? So it's all about negligence. So because here in these cases negligence was, just like, I mean, nowadays, if a person does rent, what does the British law say about renting vehicles and things?
Same thing, you're liable for any damage, etc.
What if it's not your fault? Still liable.
What if it breaks down?
Well, no, well, vehicles insurance, but if you hired something that wasn't insured, as long as you weren't negligent, then you're not responsible.
Okay.
But if you were negligent,
Yeah.
then you're liable for it.
Yeah.
You have to take precautions to keep it safe.
Yeah. Yeah. So that would be the same thing then.
Mm.
So obviously the insurance would be a separate entity. Yeah. So if a person took out insurance, like a sort of security, if the guy renting it out said, I want a security that nothing's going to happen to it, then possibly that could, like a deposit. Okay. So next, another thing with animals is with the animals you're going to have reins. So depending on how hard you pull on the reins, it could harm the animal, right? So what if a person pulls on the reins, and this causes the animal to harm itself? Yeah, animal collapses and dies. In kabaha الدابة بلجامها, if a person was to pull from the bridle of the animal, or ضربها, or he struck it. So obviously there needs to be a certain amount of striking of the animal that's permitted, because that's how the animal gets going. Yeah. So if he struck the animal, فَعَتَبَتْ, and the animal was to collapse or die, what's going to happen here? So there's ikhtilaf here. Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, he says that the person will be responsible, and Imam Abu Yusuf and Imam Muhammad rahimahullah, they say that it's not going to be responsible. Yeah. Now Imam Abu Hanifa's opinion is considered to be the qiyas, meaning it's considered to be the theory. The theory is that striking the animal, that's the cause for the death. Yeah. So this is why technically he's done something which normally wouldn't have been done. He didn't need to strike it. He didn't need to pull the reins. But their position is what we call the istihsan. Their position is the position which breaks the theory. So when we talk about fiqh, what we try to understand is Hanafi fiqh is trying to lay out all the theory for everything. We're limited to how much dalil we have, Quran ayats and hadith and statements of Sahaba. So when we put these together, we have to we've got 100 pieces of a jigsaw puzzle, and we've only got 10 pieces that have been given to us. And we've got to try and understand what the rest of the pieces are. Yeah, we've got to make our own pieces. So this is why, this is the theory, this is. So they'll lay out the theory, And then sometimes you might get like a verse of the Quran or a hadith or, you know, necessity or, you know, the way people do things which kind of overrides the theory. So in those places, theory is adjusted. This is called istihsan. Yeah, it's called istihsan. So we adjust the theory because our law is based upon divine revelation. So that's why we're grounded in divine revelation. Unlike man-made laws, which is purely based upon reasoning. Yeah, so it's all reasoning and there's nothing really to adjust this.
And it's also translation as theory, and is this
Qiyas. So qiyas is theory.
and was
So remember, in fiqh, we try to theorize every single thing, everything. Like for example, is this water pure or not? Is it halal? Can we do wudu with this? Yeah. So obviously the Quran and the Hadith has not said anything about this water. So we theorize that if water is given to us and it doesn't seem that this water has been contaminated in any way, therefore we assume that the water is clean. Even if the water was impure, our salat would be okay if we didn't wudu with it. See that theory that you come out with? Does that make sense? But if someone obviously came in the room and said, sorry, don't touch that water is contaminated, and that kind of breaks our theory now. Yeah. So this is what we try and do in fiqh. When we're studying fiqh, we're trying to understand all this theory, and all the scholars that have been coming, they've been trying to put these more pieces onto the jigsaw.
what do you say istihsan means?
Istihsan, it means when the theory is overridden, when you override the theory. Like for example, pork is haram, wine is haram. That's the theory is everywhere on earth it should be haram. In any condition it should be haram. But if a person is dying and the doctor says to them, the only thing that's going to keep you alive is for you to eat this pork, right? Then what happens? You break the theory. So you're breaking the theory where it's needed. Everyone got that? Okay. So this is why Imam Abu Hanifa, he looks at the qiyas, the theory, and the Sahibain, they look at the istihsan in this case. Okay. Now,
What do they say about this?
so they say that basically, if you hire an animal, it's not possible for you to be able to utilize the animal without pulling the reins to some degree. And then measuring how much you need to pull is very difficult on a journey. It's not something you can you can't empirically sort of measure it. It's all up to the situation and the person. Everyone got that? Okay, so these kind of concepts can be understood in today's times as well. Like for example, driving a car. Yeah, so if it's a manual car, then obviously driving it, giving it the right petrol, the right diesel, keeping it the engine cool, and not wearing out the tires or things like that. Yeah. Using them according to the norm, the custom. That's what would be considered to be appropriate. And anything beyond that would be considered to be negligence. Okay, now when you hire someone out, this is known as an ajir, yeah, an employee, an ajir. So there are two types of employees. These come under leasing contracts as well. Like for example, let's say you have a dentist and you have nurses working there. You're paying them. Therefore, they're your ajirs there. So they have certain rules that you have to abide by. Or for example, like let's say taxi driver, you ask for a taxi or an Uber, right? And you're going to pay them. That person is now the rules of ijara come under here, or anything of that sort. Or maybe you're working for someone, so therefore, you're going to be a person. So this is called an ajir. There's two types of ajir. Wal ujara ala darbain. Yeah, ujara of two types. Ajirun mushtarak and ajirun khas. So ajir mushtarak, ajir khas. Ajir mushtarak basically means an employee who is not restricted to one job. Yeah, an employee who is not restricted to one job and he's contracted by multiple people. So at one time, he can have 3 or 4 contracts that he's working on. Yeah, like you can get a guy maybe who is an admin for a particular organization, and at the same time he's also someone who is doing a long-term project with another organization as well, and he's also someone who is working for, yeah, so you can have multiple contracts that a person has, yeah, and this is not restricted to one person. Ajir khas, on the other hand, is someone who is restricted to one person. Everyone understand that? Yeah, so Ajir khas is like 9 to 5 he's working for you. He's not going to work for anyone else. This is like a specific. Everyone got that? So he says, Al-Mushtarak man la yastahiq al-ujra. Mushtarak, Ajir Mushtarak is a person who does not deserve the ujra, the wage, hatta ya'mal, until he does the job. Once he's done the job, then he deserves to get paid. He hasn't done the job, doesn't deserve to get paid. Like sabbagh, like the person who dyes the cloth. Now the guy who dyes the cloth, is he just going to be doing your job? No. So let's say obviously you give him a day or two or a week. Well, in that day, 2 or a week, he can be doing work for multiple people. So this guy only deserves money when he's done the job. Wal qassar, and the person who washes the clothing as well. Yeah, person who washes the clothing, same thing. Okay. Now, let's say for example, you've given your jacket to dry cleaners, or you've given your certain material, someone to get dyed, whatever. So now, in this case, the item that you've given to him, what does that come under? That's going to come under an amana, yeah. So wal mata amanatun fi yadihi in halaka, if it gets destroyed without negligence, lam yadman shay, he's not responsible. This is according to Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah. And according to Sahibain, they say no. They say that he will be responsible for it. What's that noise? Is that car? Tank? Everyone understand that? Okay, so there's two.
Is this in reference to the sabbagh? So if you give them something to
Yeah.
if it perishes, then they're not responsible for it.
Yeah, so I mean, it could be anything. Let's say, for example, you gave your laptop to someone to get fixed. You gave them a phone to get fixed. You had some machinery to get fixed. You gave it to them, and they damaged it. Then they're responsible for it. Yeah, if it gets damaged out of negligence, everyone says damaged. If it gets damaged without the transgressing or doing anything which is not supposed to, then Imam Hanifa says amana. Sahibain say no. In this case, it won't be amana. Okay. وما تلف بعمله كتخريب الثوب من دقه وزلق الحمال وانقطاع الحبل الذي يشد به المكاري الحمل وغرق السفينة من مدها مضمون. However, if the damage was if the damage occurred because of the guy doing something to it. So let's say you gave your laptop to the guy, and the guy was opening it and he snapped the motherboard, cracked it. Yeah, now he's responsible, everyone says. Or for example, like you gave cloth, and that cloth that you gave him, he was, trying to clean that cloth, and he scraped it and he tore a big cut into it. He's responsible. Or anything like that. Does that make sense? So all of these things, if the item was with that person and it got damaged without him physically doing something to it, then that was the previous ikhtilaf. But if he did something to it, then in that case he's going to be responsible. Like, gives example, takhriq al-thawb, like tearing the cloth due to daq, scraping it, was zalq al-hammal, and the hammal, the carriers carrying it, they slipped, and it was, let's say, it was some dishes and they broke. وانقطاع الحبل, and the rope that they used, يشد به المكاري الحمل, that the makari is the person who goes and carries the stuff for them. Let's say like nowadays we have trucks and they put stuff in the back and have a rope around it. That snapped on the motorway and all the stuff fell off. Yeah, وغرق السفينة, or someone rented a boat to carry stuff for them and it sank من مدها, because they were pulling it. مضمون, yeah, this is considered to be madmoon, all responsible, because it was their action that done it. It was the action that done it. Everyone got that?
So
Now-
a common scenario in this country, you get lots of claims like this, is so you give somebody something to work on, and whilst it's in storage, they haven't yet worked on it, whilst it's in storage, it gets damaged because there's a leaking water on it or something. So you give machinery to be repaired, they've got it in storage in a warehouse, they haven't worked on it yet, a pipe is burst, and the machinery is ruined because of the water on it. That falls in the first example.
First example.
Because they haven't worked on
Yeah.
it. And Imam Abu Hanifa says, well, if they're negligent, and that's why it's leaked, then they're liable. Why do the others,
No, Imam Hanifa says they won't be liable for it. If they haven't done anything to it,
Yeah,
and it gets damaged, it comes under amana
right.
So
They're
just-
not liable at all.
at all. So if that water's spilt on it and they didn't, if
Not
investigations,
If they were negligent, I mean.
so if investigations are done and they find out that these guys should have fixed the roof,
Yeah,
right, then
Yeah.
obviously they're going to be
they're
liable for it.
But Imam Yusuf and Imam Muhammad say he's not liable at all.
No, they are. They say in both scenarios.
Oh, okay.
Both scenarios.
Right, okay.
Okay, now the next thing. Is a person going to be liable for human loss? Yeah, so human loss. So let's say, for example, on a boat or on a car, taxi driver driving the car, you're driving, smashes into someone, people die, passengers die. Yeah, are they going to be responsible for that? He said, إِلَّا أَنَّهُ لَا يَضْمَنْ بِهِ بَنِي آدَمْ. Humans' loss will not be liable. كَمَنْ غَرَقَ فِي السَّفِينَةِ. It's like a person who drowns in a ship, or سَقَطَ مِنَ الدَّابَةِ, or he falls off the mount of an animal. لَمْ يَضْمَنْهُ. The rider, the driver, whoever, he won't be responsible for that. Yeah, because obviously that's something that he's not really out of his control power.
What if he was negligent and he's driving unsafely?
Then possibly yes, because then it would come under murder. Yeah, manslaughter. So out of the 5 types of murder I mentioned to you before, so this would come under manslaughter. Everyone got that? Okay, now other jobs now, a bit more kind of technical jobs. Like a person who's a bloodletter. So in them days, like a doctor, they used to cut the vein and allow the blood to flow out. Yeah. So what if this person, he cuts someone, like nowadays a doctor, he's doing a blood test for someone, and he's taking the blood and accidentally he cuts the wrong veins and his blood keeps coming out, it's not stopping, and he dies. Then what? Yeah. Or for example, a person, the similar kind of job, but a veterinarian. So this vet, he is working on an animal, and he cuts an animal, he does some incisions, and the animal begins to bleed non-stop and he dies. Then what?
Is it an accident or negligence?
So again, if it's negligence, if he did something beyond what he was supposed to do, right? If he cut the area that he's not supposed to cut, then he's responsible. Otherwise, he's not responsible. So in fasad al-fasad, or bazagh al-bazagh, fasad is for the human one, and the bazagh is for the animal. Yeah, so fasad would be for humans and bazagh. وَلَمْ يَتَجَاوَزَ الْمَوْضِعَ الْمُعْتَادِ. This person did not go beyond the normal area of the body. فَلَا ضَمَانَ عَلَيْهِمَا. There is no daman upon them. Like a dentist, or a doctor, or a nurse, anything like that. Right? As long as they have done within their own, areas of expertise.
Nowadays, what they say, if it's the majority of the profession,
Yeah.
they agree with that, then it's fine.
Yeah, that would sound fine. That's probably what the fuqaha would today say. فَلَا ضَمَانَ عَلَيْهِمَا فِيمَا عَطَبَ. There's no demand liability upon them too, regarding what has perished. مِنْ ذَلِكَ وَإِنْ تَجَاوَزَهُ ضَمِنْ. However, if he goes beyond, then he's going to have to pay. Everyone understand that? So all of these, this is to do with ajir al-mushtarak, the mushtarak ajir. Now what about the ajir al-khas, the one specific person that works for you? هو الذي يستحق الأجرة. He is the person who deserves a wage بتسليم نفسه, because he has submitted himself في المدة, within the time period. وإن لم يعمل, even if it doesn't work. It's like someone you employ. Yeah, you say to him, right, your hours are from 9 to 5. There might be no job on that day. Right, he just sits down. you still got to get paid. Whereas the other one, Ajir Mushtarak, he only gets paid and does the job. Yeah, so this guy, in lam ya'mal, even if he doesn't do work. Kaman istajar rajulan, just as a person who hires another man, shahran, for an entire month, lil khidmati, for service, or li ra'il ghanam, or for being a shepherd. Yeah. So obviously in them days, these were the kind of jobs that were out there. Nowadays, it's more complex now, the kind of jobs that people have. Yeah, so various types of jobs someone can have. You can work for a company. Most likely, all the jobs that people usually have for working for companies come under this. Yeah, the employees that they contract hire. وَلَا ضَمَانَ الْأَجِيرِ الْخَاص. The Ajir al-Khas does not have to pay a thing. There's no liability on him. فِي مَا تَلَفَ فِي يَدِهِ. Anything that gets damaged because of him. وَلَا فِي مَا تَلَفَ مِنْ عَمَلِهِ. Nor anything which gets damaged because of his own work. So anything in his possession that gets damaged, he's not responsible. And anything that gets damaged because of his work, yeah, he's not responsible. Unlike the previous, yeah, where first of all we had ikhtilaf. Imam Hanifa said in the Ajir Mushtarak that, it's amana, sahibain say no. And if they actually have done work and damaged it, responsible for it. Illa an yata'adda, unless he has done negligence, then yadman, then he's liable for it. So if you have an employee and he's working for you, just like you have, if you go to PC World and these places, you give your laptop. These people just work there. That's their job. And you left your computer there. And overnight, some thieves came and robbed the place. And your laptop went. Right? They're not responsible for it. Now what happened? Yeah, and if they were doing work on it, and something broke inside of that, and it was, within their normal, work field, and it got damaged, they're not responsible for it, unless they did something to it they're not supposed to. Then they're going to be responsible for that. Okay, everyone got that?
They're personally not liable, but the employer, the master who you contracted with. So you go to PC World, you give your laptop, and the particular employee damages it. He's not personally liable because he just works for his employer. But is PC World liable?
Why would they be liable?
Because you've given them your laptop and they've broken it.
Yeah, but Amana is in a trust.
Remember, if they were negligent, I mean.
Negligent, yeah. Negligent, yeah. He's responsible, even negligence.
He's personally responsible.
He's personally responsible.
Right. Okay.
Negligence. Obviously, but if the company has some sort of agreement with him in their contract that, look, if you do damage anything, right, we'll sort it out. We've got insurance. We'll cover it. That's something else. So you have to remember, Islamically, you can't charge someone for something without, a reason, a valid reason. Like you can't even stipulate a monetary penalty on anyone.
What penalty?
Monetary penalty. Like if someone comes late to class and we say, right, anyone who comes late, they've got to pay £10. You can't, Islamically, you can't do that.
You can't do it.
You can't do it?
It's called a penalty clause. It's void, unenforceable.
So what about like parking and all that?
That's a very controversial area, parking. And the courts have sort of twisted it a little bit and said it's not a penalty, it's compensation in a fixed compensation rather than a penalty.
Okay.
Anything that if you pick up a contract textbook, there'll be a whole chapter on penalties, and they're not enforceable.
Okay.
What about football penalties? You get fined for like red cards, yellow cards. Is that not enforceable then?
What about, if you come late to work? If you come late to work, and they say, if you came late by 5 minutes, we're going to deduct 1 hour's worth of it.
And that's different, because that's not a penalty. You've arrived late, you're in breach of contract. You're supposed to arrive at 9 o'clock. If you arrive late, they're entitled to have you there at 9 o'clock.
But they can't charge you anything extra.
They can't charge you extra. They can deduct, but they can't say. Right.
What about library? Library, if you give the book back late.
Well, technically, that's not allowed either.
So see, the same thing Islamically. This is why, like in the banks, they have a problem in the banks, which is if you borrow money from a bank and you have to pay it off in a certain period of time, and you delay in payments, then normally you'll get some sort of a fine, but you can't fine because it's a monetary. So the way they structure it in the contract is, if you make a late payment, then you promise, right, to pay this much money to a particular charity. That's how they do it. So it becomes like a vow.
You still have to put.
Can they enforce that on you?
If the government,
So you
accepts
say
it.
like a normal Islamic bank now, if you have a mortgage with them or something, and they say if you make a late payment to them, can they chase,
It depends on the wording they use in the contract.
enforceable? That's
It depends on the
The
wording.
way they get around it is to say it's an administration charge, or because it causes them to do extra work, they have to administer that, so they charge you an administration fee. That's the way they do it.
So it depends on the wording they use. Islamically, like the administration fee, you can charge as long as it's reasonable.
Yeah.
Like
same here. It has to be
Yeah,
reasonable.
has to be
Yeah,
reasonable.
same thing.
So the parking fee that you get, that's just like an administration fee. So say if you've overstepped, I don't know, 10 minutes, and the parking assistant says, okay, you slaps a ticket on because of that. You have to pay.
And that's different because what's happened is you've agreed that you're going to park for 2 hours, right? You've paid them for 2 hours. Now you've parked for an extra hour. They're entitled to payment for an extra hour, right? But they say that because you've breached that, then they have to administer that, and they charge a larger fee. But that's why parking is very controversial. There's loads of cases in the courts about parking, whether it's a penalty or compensation. So that's a very touchy subject. Lots of ikhtilaf on that.
So you could contest it, even you don't need to pay that penalty, you can contest it.
Yeah, lots of people have, and they've got away with not paying it on the basis that it's a penalty.
Okay, so everyone understand that? Right, let's just do one more. Okay, next. Remember we mentioned in transactions, we said that if a person stipulates a condition which is not conducive to the contract, then these renders the contract to be invalid. And I gave you example of 5 types of conditions, over there. So over here, same thing applies here as well. So al-ijara tufsiduha ash-shurut kama tufsidu al-bay'. So those conditions which nullify a contract, transaction, also nullify a leasing contract as well. Same thing. For example, like let's say a person says, I'm going to rent you my house on the condition that every Saturday I can come to your house and I can stay there all day. Yeah, so that obviously goes against the whole idea of benefiting from the usufruct. Yeah, because if you have to accommodate for someone else, that means that you're not really benefiting it from properly. Okay, next. Let's say a person rents or he hires someone for their services, an employee. Are they allowed, so let's say you hired someone to work in your company. Now you decided that you need to travel to Pakistan. Can you take your employee with you? Like force him to go with you as well because it's part of, or not? Man istajara abdan li khidmati. A person, it looks like you tried it. So man istajara abdan li khidma, whoever hires the services of a slave for service. فَلَيْسَ لَهُ, then the employer does not have the right أن يسافر به فَلَيْسَ لَهُ, meaning the employee is not necessary for him أن يسافر به, to travel with him, إلا أن يشترط عليه, unless the employer stipulates this in the contract. Part of your contract is you're going to have to do traveling as well. Yeah, ذلك عليه ذلك في العقد. Remember, terms and conditions are very, very important to read. Yeah, just as nowadays Islamically as well, because everything that in terms and conditions is going to be based upon, or is going to depend upon what they agree upon. So you could read the terms and conditions and say, I'm not happy with this, then that would nullify the offer. You're going to make a new offer. So if the person does put a condition in, like a job, and he says, right, 3 days a week you got to come to the office, 2 days a week you're going to have to do locum, travel to different places, work for this place, work for this place. A lot of, I think, agents, I don't know how the agency contracts work, where people work for locum, pharmacists and dentists and these kind of things. So their wording would be specific. What do they usually? You don't have it.
You essentially you're self-employed, isn't it?
So don't the agency. So that negotiation is the terms and conditions. Yeah. So is there like a distance that you agree to how far you'll go?
You can do it, yeah. It's totally up to yourself.
And what if one day you agree to a certain distance and they say no?
They would fall under like a contractor. You could work for multiple companies effectively.
Yeah, so what it is,
Yeah, so this is more probably for like a contracted employee. So, like myself, I'm on a contract, and in the contract it says reasonably practical or something along those lines, and it says they will cover any cost, and it lists out the cost as well.
Okay.
So now at that point, if I didn't want to accept the offer, I can say no. But even then, a lot of the companies, when they ask me to go somewhere, I can still say no, I can't because I've got maybe work commitment or something. If I can't give them a valid reason just because I don't want to, then they can go back to the contract and say,
Okay.
you're not going.
All right. Okay. Actually, you know what? We'll stop there. Gee, any questions?
There was one thing, so you know when you're riding an animal, there was one musla, or when you have an animal for carrying,
Yeah.
and let's say they can only carry 500 kilos, and you make the animal carry 550, and because of that excess weight, that animal dies, you're only liable for that excess
Extra,
of 50.
Yeah.
And there's no liability on that animal at all in Islam. You don't have to pay for that animal.
No. Would have to. The value of the animal, you obviously divide it over, 550. Yeah, and you only have to give that 50, whatever the value is. Anything else?
Would you not just pay for the 50 extra bits of item that was lost? Let's say I hired out, a camel to take 100 bars of gold across the country, but someone else hired a camel to take 100 bars of plastic. So one's worth £1 million, one's worth £10, essentially, of luggage. So then if one was to die, we'd have to divide it by 100, and the excess that you'll end up being the loss. But the other one would end up being very minimal. In both cases,
the value,
you
the
do a fraction.
value of the animal, not what it's carrying.
Animal. So let's say, for example, the animal's value is £1,000.
Yeah. Let's say the animal's value is £1,000.
Okay, animal's value is £1,000, and the guy said you can only carry 500 kilos on an animal, right? And you carried 550 kilos. So what you do is you divide over the value of the animal, 550, how much it works out to be, and the portion of 50, that's what you pay.
Okay, based off of the value.
So it'd be £100 basically paying.
10%.
Yeah, 10%. So if you think about these kind of things, they're very intricate. These kind of laws were being discussed in times where, normally you wouldn't imagine like the Arabs would have such intricate laws. Obviously Byzantine and Persia must have had intricate laws as well. But the Muslims, the laws that they had developed were very intricate. And it required a lot of thought process to think about these things, little details. And then later on in today's times as well, applying them. So if you read like online, Islamic banking, there's a book called Introduction to Islamic Finance by Mufti Taqi Usmani. If you read in there, he's got a section on leasing, ijara. And you can see nowadays how the Islamic banking institutes implement this kind of contract, ijara. Because it's very, common.
So what was the reason for not being able to Islamically find someone? What's the reason? Is it just
Islamically, to find someone?
Yeah, monetary.
Fine.
Yeah, fine.
Yeah, because you need basically in Islamically to make something lazim upon someone, binding upon someone, you need to have like an agreement on both sides.
Okay.
Otherwise you can't.
So
Unless it's obviously something to do with like a murder or harm, you've injured them or you cause damage to them.
So if a league stipulates that for a red card will be fined this much, and the teams have to sign up to that, then it's okay to fine.
It depends how they worded the contract. You always got to look at the contract.
Okay.
If someone ever says to you, "Is this transaction allowed?" you always ask them what was the details of the contract. Yeah, what were the terms of the contract? And if they don't mention the terms of the contract to you, then you can't give an answer, because in the terms something could be said, but the way they express it to you is totally different. Yeah, so if they had, like, for example, like you mentioned, that if a person does damage, harm someone, right, within this particular thing, then they're going to be charged for this much. Then obviously, is that really allowed or not? But if a person was to say something like, okay, everyone here, everyone, Mufti Islam next. Mufti Imran. Yeah. So, but if they had it in the contract, for example, like I don't know how they'll have to word it.
So football leagues, they have this table of fines,
Yeah.
and they state.
So that would Islamically wouldn't be allowed,
Okay.
unless the word. I'm trying to think of what kind of wording you could have used. Yeah. For that.
Please,
Huh?
please pay a payment to the FA if you get it.
No, because you have to make something like legally. It has to be binding. So unless they kind of use some sort of wording, I don't know. A vow, Islamically would be a vow. Yeah. I vow that if I do this, that's how Islamic banks do it. I vow, they'll write, I so and so vow that if I pay a late payment, I'm going to give this much to charity. And that becomes a binding
It has to
vow.
go to charity, not to that
Then
company.
charity, it goes to charity.
Okay.
So every Islamic bank is connected to a charity, and the money goes to them. So they don't profit from fines.
So how about if you're renting a house and you sublet a room or something?
However, if you are,
If you subletting.
yeah, it depends if they allow it in the contract. If the contract says that you can rent it or you can rent it to someone else, that'd be allowed. Otherwise, if they say no, you only allowed to rent it, then you can't do that.